Welcome into the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports. I am your host, Matthew Peterson, filming today's show during our live show, which airs every single Thursday at 4 o'clock Eastern. Now, on today's show, we're going to break down the latest buzz on the Browns defensive coordinator vacancy. We've heard that Brian Flores has emerged as a favorite. Jim Schwartz interviewed with the team last week. So a lot of ground to cover on today's show. But let's start with the first segment, which is Brian Flores. Is he the favorite for defensive coordinator? I'm going to give it 3 Bernie heads. I'm going to go 3 Bernie heads on this one. I don't think we can say it's an absolute slam dunk for Bernie heads. The reason why we're talking about this is Albert Breer wrote about it in his column, which we'll get to in a second. But there is some news for today, more than just rumors, right? The Browns are interviewing Brian Flores today, and potentially by the time you're watching this, the interview has already concluded, and we've got some takeaways from that. But as we film right now, I'm guessing they're in Berea talking about, hey, how can you bring out the best of this defense, and do I have to completely retool the entire defensive line, or can we salvage Jordan Elliott and Tommy Togiai? But Albert Breer wrote in Sports Illustrated that Brian Flores is probably the favorite for the job. Now, it was a mailbag article, so Tyler Johnson's a fun follow on Twitter if you haven't already, asked him, like, hey, who's the favorite for this? And he said, if I had to pick someone, probably Brian Flores. Now, Flores, Jim Schwartz, Gerard Mayo, and Sean Desai are all candidates for the defensive coordinator opening. The thing is, and this is where people start to, separate, is Flores runs a 3-4 defense. And I'll talk about what that means and what that means for the Browns, but let's go right to Albert Breer's article. If I had to peg a favorite right now, I'd probably go with Pittsburgh senior defensive analyst, linebackers coach Brian Flores. And I have heard owner Jimmy Haslam is a fan of his. Here's where I sort of stand on Brian Flores. He'd be a fantastic hire. He's a great defensive mind. He's an awesome defensive coordinator. I would love it if they hired Brian Flores. But the Browns are not built for a 3-4 defense. And they're not really in a window with what players they have and where they are in their contracts to take a year or two and retool this defense. You can't switch from a 4-3 to a 3-4 with the same personnel. It just can't happen. So for that, they have to go to the draft. They have to go to free agency. It's a lot of moving pieces to completely turn around in just one offseason. It could take 2 off seasons, right? When Flores went to Miami, that was fine. They were in no real rush to win a Super Bowl in year 1. So they could do that. Browns are not really in that same position. But to play devil's advocate with myself, look at the Browns' 2023 defensive line. There needs to be changes. So maybe it's not a bad idea to have Flores come in here and go, I know you run a 4-3. I know this roster is built for a 4-3. But let's be honest. The 4 of that 3, only 1 was good last year, Garrett. So what do you care if we cut bait with the other 3 and bring in 3 new guys? It's not like this Browns 4-3 was really good last year and it was the secondary that held this team back. No. So for that reason, where I used to be somewhat close-minded on the idea of bringing on Brian Flores because of the change and it maybe not being great timing to switch defenses, outside of Myles Garrett and Perrion Winfrey, all other jobs are definitely open for business. And just Myles Garrett, not even Perrion Winfrey. Myles Garrett is the only absolute starter in this front 7 next year, along with JOK. So for that, maybe a change isn't the worst thing in the world. Let's talk about Jim Schwartz next, though. So that's the other candidate in this case here that seems to be vying for the job, and it's kind of like number 1, number 2 right there with Flores. Albert Breer wrote this. Conversely, going with Jim Schwartz, whose connection to Belichick is actually from Cleveland, would represent 2 different things. The first would be scheme familiarity. What he would presumably bring is a lot closer to the Pete Carroll style of defense that Joe Woods ran the past 3 years in Cleveland. The second is a connection to GM Andrew Berry from the time the two were together in Philadelphia. All in all, you're going to see a lot of people fighting on Twitter about Kevin Stefanski, Jim Schwartz, or Brian Flores. I'll be happy with either one. Why? Because they're both upgrades from Joe Woods. That's the whole point of hiring someone after you fired Joe Woods. Can you find someone better? They've done that. They have found two guys better. So if you want Flores and you don't get Flores and you get Schwartz, remind yourself, it wasn't that you fired Flores to get Schwartz. No, it's still an upgrade from Joe Woods. So I'll take it. The job is really simple. Run a 3-4, run a 4-3. I don't give a damn. Do better than Joe Woods. And that's not asking for a whole lot here. Now pick a DC for me. Is it Brian Flores or is it Jim Schwartz? Get in the comment section below and let me know which defensive coordinator you are rolling with. Brian Flores, definitely the popular candidate, and we'll talk more about Schwartz in just a moment. So I'm expecting to see a lot of BFs down in the comment section. By the way, on yesterday's show, I said if we reach 16,700 subscribers, we're going to do a dog bowl on a video, which we usually only do during our live shows every Thursday, 4 o'clock Eastern, or during Sunday watch parties. Well, I've got the dog bowl on hand, and we are 81 subs away. So if you want to watch a grown man drink a full beer out of a dog bowl, hit that big red button and subscribe. Let's move on to the second element of today's show, which is, are we all in shambles if it's not Brian Flores? If the Browns don't hire him? No, I'm giving it one Bernie head. I'm kind of preparing you guys to, I'm not softening the blow in case this doesn't happen, because it may very well happen. But if it doesn't, do not put your head in your pillow and scream and go, oh my God, the Browns are doomed. No. The DC interview list, like I said, is filled with names that, in my opinion, are all better than Joe Woods. So if it's not Brian Flores, sure. Maybe it's not the guy you would have wished for. Maybe it's not the best possible candidate. And that's frustrating, no doubt about it. Don't get me wrong. But it's still an upgrade. And that's the whole point of this, was to find an upgrade from Joe Woods. Sean Desai, who is the assistant head coach, former defensive coordinator for the Bears. He's got experience in that role. He's a candidate. And then Gerard Mayo, who doesn't have any DC experience, but the dude's a leader. And what does this Browns defense need, I think, more than anything right now? It needs actual leadership. We have accountability by Stefanski benching Myles Garrett for the first couple plays of the game, but it should never get to that spot, right? And that has to start with coaching. So let's break down the top two guys a little bit closer here, and that is Flores versus Schwartz. Let's start with Brian Flores' defense. It's a 3-4 front, which is not what the Browns roster is currently constructed to run in. It would be weird to see Myles Garrett play the 5 technique or the outside linebacker. I would think outside linebacker, but I'm not really positive. Heavy blitz packages. Joe Woods, he hated blitzing. He loved to only generate pressure with the front 4, maybe bring a linebacker, but that was about it. Nope. With Flores, you're going to get a lot of creative blitz packages. He's also really good at stopping the run. That was something he instituted early on in Miami, which is we are not going to get gashed on the ground, which is a big, sigh of relief for Browns fans looking for that in a coordinator. As for Jim Schwartz, he runs a 4-3 front, which the Browns currently operate under, so it wouldn't require a big personnel change. He's big on man defense, which I like. I never got why you drafted top-tier corners like Greg Newsome and Denzel Ward just to have him sit in a zone. No, let him get in the lab. Let him go on an island with these receivers. That's why you got first-round talent, not to put him in a zone. Now, he also, Schwartz, gets the best out of his top pass rushers. So if I'm Myles Garrett right now, I'm happy either way, but maybe you're even happier if Jim Schwartz is hired. Let me explain. Jim Schwartz, as a head coach or a defensive coordinator, statistically brings out the best from his pass rushers. Ndamukong Suh's 10 sacks in 2010 when Schwartz was the head coach, career high. Marcel Darius, 10 sacks in 2014 when he was the DC in Buffalo, career high. Mario Williams, 14.5 sacks that year, also a career high. Fletcher Cox in 2018, 10.5 sacks. We're talking about an interior defensive lineman, career high. He's done the same for his entire career, and even now in Tennessee, Danico Autry, Jeffrey Simmons, they're becoming household names on the defensive line. Who's there? Jim Schwartz is, and they both had career highs in sacks. We've got more to cover, more ground to cover on today's show, but it was made possible by BetUS. Now, you've heard me talk about BetUS before, so let's kind of skip past the fuzzies of it. Chatsports.com/bet, promo code Browns125. Let's talk wildcard weekend. My favorite is the Bills minus 13. I just don't see a way Skylar Thompson goes into Buffalo and covers 13 points. I think the Bills win 42-7. They're going to absolutely shit pump them. So that's my favorite. My underdog, picture this. It is Doug Peterson, Gatorade bath, camera on Trevor Lawrence, and that luscious via hair. Brandon Staley maybe getting fired after a one-round playoff exit. I don't know, Jim. People are talking. I like the Jags plus 2.5. So whatever picks you like, whatever games you like, make them at BetUS. Chatsports.com/bet, promo code Browns125. So third and final segment on today's show, All-Pro Brownies? You betcha, 4 Bernie heads, babies. It's really upsetting that the Browns had this much talent, the best in the league at their respective positions, and they only won 7 games. Like, that is a blow. Joel Bitonio voted All-Pro. Myles Garrett voted All-Pro. And Nick Chubb voted All-Pro. I mean, first off, round of applause for them. Like, I don't want to diminish from them, but it's a bummer to have 3 All-Pro players and only win 7 games. And that's where the people who want Stefanski fired have a decent gripe, saying, there's a lot of talent in Cleveland. This is the best roster we've ever had, and it needs to do more than back-to-back losing seasons. Myles Garrett, 16 sacks, 60 tackles, 2 forced fumbles. Nick Chubb this year, 1,500 yards, had a phenomenal start. Sort of tapered off down at the stretch, but still, he averaged 5 yards a pop and 12 touchdowns. And then Joel Bitonio, by far the best offensive lineman this year. PFF ranked him 2nd out of 78, an overall grade of 87.6, only 1 sack allowed. So, shout out to all of them. Hey, if you haven't already, like today's video to congratulate Chubb, Garrett, and Bitonio for their All-Pro honors.